All right, welcome to Comics and Coffee, where we talk some nerd stuff off of a nice cup of Joe. Well, today actually I'm drinking green tea, but it's okay. So I'm actually drinking some Kai tea, and it is cold out here in Atlanta. Like it is snowing, literally, and it is just so random. So we're, us Southern people don't do well with the snow. So we're basically just trying to tough it out. But we're starting off the new year, first show of the year, Comics and Coffee. We made it to 2022 in spite of all this craziness that's been going on, and we're starting off with a bang. I actually, for the first time, we have our first guest on the show, Miss Heather Eisenberg, aka DJ Starfire. Now, before I have her speak, we have it's interesting because I met her through a certification process that I'm going through now, known as Geek Therapy, which we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the show. But I found out about it, through a friend, and I linked up through Geek Therapeutics, and basically saw how it was using like pop culture references, anime, comics, video games, all this really cool stuff. And you can intertwine in therapy, which is something I was kind of already doing. So I was like, man, this is dope. And you can actually get certified in it. So I went through the training, and the trainings are so cool and spot on. I met some really cool people. And then I went to supervision where I met, Heather. And she was one of my supervisors to help me get my hours for my certification process, which I still have to take the test, but she was so awesome. I learned so much from her. So I just want to thank you, Heather, for being a part of the show today, taking the time out your day and busy schedule to do it, because I know you have a lot going on. So I would like for you just to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us your origin story of what is the origin of Heather Eisenberg, aka DJ Starfire?
Well, first off, thank you for having me, Eli. I love doing these things, and this is going to be a lot of fun. My origin story, I think, you know what it is? I think I was born into it. My dad was a huge geek. So I can remember from like even being really young watching Star Trek with him.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Yeah, he was a huge Trekkie. He had, up until the time of his passing, he had recorded every single Star Trek episode from the first one that ever aired up until I don't know what year it was. I think it was like 2001. So
okay, so we're maybe like Star Trek Voyager. That was around that time, I think. Star Trek.
Yeah. So like, yeah, around 2001. And he was also doing Deep Space Nine and stuff like that. So
okay.
But I remember fondly watching Next Generation with him, and then kind of getting in, and this is like the wild thing. Somebody asked a question in the Geek Therapeutics Discord a while back about like, what was your first anime? And I always thought it was Sailor Moon.
Okay.
But it's not. So I had been watching this cartoon. It was like a 3-movie series, I believe, called Unico. And apparently that is an anime. Again, introduced by my dad, but like I guess that was my starter anime into anime.
Wow.
Yeah. I thought it was Sailor Moon, and it was like,
okay.
I gotta say, there was one movie called the Island of Puppets, or Puppet Island, or something like that. Creepiest thing in the world. Gave me nightmares all the time, but I watched it. And it's still creepy. I watched it the other day. It's still creepy.
As we all watch things that we're not supposed to at that age.
I know. So I get into sci-fi through my dad. Obviously, I got into anime that way. I guess, also Sailor Moon. But then, going through my dad's things, I found out that he was huge into Dungeons and Dragons, and had his own like kind of built table
Okay.
for it. It was very cool. And then I'm like, what's this? So then I got introduced to that, and then that leads into cosplay, and then, video games, of course, because, what kind of geeky household would it be without video games?
Right. And you kind of getting deeper into the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
That's so dope. And I remember going back to your dad and recording Star Trek. My dad was a huge Trekkie too. He recorded some episodes on VHS, back in the day. I don't know if he recorded every single one. So that's pretty dope that your dad actually went through all of the sagas. That's a lot of episodes, but he was really into.
Yeah, it was all in order too. It was like whatever day that I think it was like Thursday nights, like Thursday, 8:00 at night, we were doing nothing but watching some Star Trek. And he has all the statues and everything. We're going to be selling some of the stuff soon. But he had all the collectibles and everything. And literally his dress code, it was like a pair of jeans that were usually ripped and a Star Trek shirt.
I love it, man. I love it. So like my dad, he was definitely into the original one and Deep Space Nine. I believe that's the one with Picard. So he was into those. Those are his two favorites and everything. And we would watch it together. I was more big on like Star Wars, which he loved too. So we would watch that together as well. So we would take turns. So we have our track days, and then we would have our Star Wars days where we would watch those together. So that's so awesome, yo. And then Unico, I've never heard of that anime before. Without spoiling it too much, what's like the synopsis of it? Like you said, it's like kind of like a horror type of.
It's not. It's supposed to be cute, and it's
really
creepy. I don't know. For me, it was creepy. I don't know. The bad guy, the puppet master guy in the Puppet Island one was just insanely creepily drawn. The rest of it is cute.
Okay.
It's just he's just the voice.
That one little key.
And oh no, it's the voice and the look of this guy. It's just the thing of nightmares. But I also, I don't know. But Unico, like I said, it's a I think there's 3 movies. It was never like a series or anything, I don't think.
Okay.
But it's about Unico, who's a unicorn, and he's the only unicorn in the world. And this spirit continues to take him from place to place, keeping and dropping him off in these new places, trying to keep him safe because there are people out to get him since he's the only unicorn. And then it's about his adventures in each one of these places. So the Puppet Island one, he ended up on Puppet Island.
Gotcha. Okay, so that was one of the adventures that he ended up.
One of the adventures, yeah.
Yo, and I just my camera girl just pulled up a picture of Unico, so I just looked at it. Okay,
he's so cute.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. Like you wouldn't think that would have like some creepy elements in it.
Can she pull up the Puppet Island and find the puppet master for you so you could really get a good look at what that nightmare looks like?
She's pulling it up. And I'm gonna see if we can add a picture of him in the when we do the edits on this. But that's interesting. I've definitely got to check it out. My first anime was Fist of North Star and Ninja Scroll, which are 2 animes I probably should not have been watching at the age of 11. So I remember my uncle was talking about both of those movies, and I thought they were like kung fu flicks. He's like, man, this dude he knows this martial arts, and it's kind of like Mad Max meets Bruce Lee and this. And I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. And I'm like, okay. So I watched it. I'm like, oh, this is a cartoon. He was like, nah, it's anime. I'm like, oh, what's the difference? He's like, well, you're about to find out. So when I watched it, I was like, oh, okay, this is a little different than watching a typical cartoon. So the animation was a lot more mature and
sure.
And the brutality of it.
I wouldn't even feel bad. I guess he started watching it when he was 8. Mm-hmm. But my now 9-year-old son has been watching Attack on Titan and Demon Slayer. So I mean, yeah.
But see, it's interesting, right? So that brings up an interesting topic, right? And I think it goes into just cultural differences because like when we look at American cartoons versus anime, like you kind of notice like certain differences in terms
Sure.
of the level, sometimes of sometimes of maturity in certain ways. I think like there's a little bit more. It seems like in certain in like that in Japanese culture, there's a little bit more leeway. It seems like for them to kind of explore other themes. Like actually, it's almost like they challenge the viewer, even as a kid, to actually think a little bit deeper. In certain concepts, because even when you watch like a lot of animes, it's not so you do have some of those shown there. It's pretty black and white in terms of good and evil, but you have a lot of those
Sure.
animes where it's kind of like a gray area into who's really evil, who's really good. And watching like those type of animes, it really explores the morality and dynamics of the characters. And with westernized cartoons, which I love, don't get me wrong, like we had some of those, right? Like we did have X-Men, which was really my introduction into geek culture, like the 90s X-Men. But it was like it wasn't as common or as frequent, I feel, as like an anime. And I'm wondering why that is. I found it to be very interesting, when we look at that.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that, with anime, and I guess Japanese culture, they incorporate mental health themes a lot. Whereas, in America, it's like, the hero has no problems because they're the hero and they can do
Right,
no bad. And then the
right,
bad guy is he's just evil for like seemingly no reason.
right.
Now when you look at things like, the Joker movie and things like that, they really are delving into a backstory and starting to create that mental health aspect,
Right.
which, really allows people to connect with it a lot more, because I don't think a lot of people can connect with, the old school superhero who's
Mm-hmm.
just perfect in every way. And it's like, there's no way anyone could ever achieve to be that.
Just so incorruptible. Like it is interesting because like Superman is usually like the standard I think of when you're
Yeah,
like
sure, yeah.
that type of description, like the Boy Scout. But it's funny because that's like my girlfriend's favorite superhero. But the irony of it is she doesn't like the typical Superman. She likes the Injustice Superman. Like the Superman that like basically just went on like a tirade of dictatorship. And I think what draws her a lot more to that character is because he is flawed and there is like some imperfection in him, and the fact that he has this power and he's able to do what, like, because everybody's like, why don't he just like basically run the government and just like
Yeah.
have everybody be peaceful and no fighting. And when he does, you kind of see like the consequences of those actions. And I think it gives more context to the character. It gives more depth as opposed to I never told a lie and I always gonna tell the truth. I'm never gonna do anything wrong. And I think that's why I've always gravitated more towards Batman. Just because to me he was more relatable.
Yeah.
In terms of that. So I do find
Absolutely. Absolutely. He had more of that, mental health background, right? He
yes,
sustained trauma.
yes,
And it's about having these heroes have that kind of backstory, that make it so relatable, because, when we, take it to, the therapeutic level, let's say, you know, um, there's a lot of people that might relate to a certain trauma and kind of say, well, hey, this is how they coped with it, right? This is somebody, even though they're fictional, but this is somebody who's like writing about somebody who,
absolutely.
sustained trauma and was able to push through and come out on top,
Yeah,
so to
and
speak.
I definitely think that's the important piece. And while we're on the subject, right? Because in addition to us being really into geek culture and loving to geek out, we're also like mental health professionals, right? Like
Yeah.
we're therapists. Like I think we're both LPCs. Where I'm we're both like licensed mental health counselors. So um let me ask you though, when did you come up with the idea like I can actually apply these like my geekdom, right, or my fandom into like my practice, like my clinical practice? Like when did
Yeah.
that light bulb go off for you?
I think it went off for me, even before I became licensed. I think it was in undergrad, where it was like I was always thinking about how I could do it. because the being a geek was so helpful to me in some of the trauma that I've sustained and some of the things I've gone through in helping me get through it. Like I said, Sailor Moon I thought was my first, and it wasn't, but nonetheless, Sailor Moon was very impactful and important for me because that is what really got me through a major trauma that I sustained when I was 15. But then, going forward, I wasn't very social, things like that. And then, here I am getting into MMORPGs, playing World of Warcraft, becoming social, learning even management skills, as you rank up in guilds and things like that. So I kind of really felt the therapeutic benefit and was always wondering how I could incorporate it. But it was so going through school and the climate of the time, it was so taboo. It was like, are you kidding me? Like that's a disorder, not like nothing healthy can come of that. And it seemed like I was being very misunderstood until about grad school, when the director of the psych program had a son who was very much into video games and was kind of saying the same things I was during class. So we started doing research there. And then getting out into the real world, it was kind of like testing my limits. A lot of places, now it's getting a little bit better, but a lot of places in the start were, we're going to just do DBT and CBT, and we have to just do evidence-based practice. And, if they even heard me bring up like an anime or something, it's like, well, what are you talking about? That has nothing to do with therapy. Get back on track. So it was very, rigid. So I didn't have a lot of, opportunity to play around until I got into where I am now, which is a private practice. And they're very much on wanting to do like the latest and greatest and always open to new and different ideas. So that's kind of where the playing started to happen.
And I'm glad you said that, because I'm right there with you. Like, just from growing up, like and even into professionalism, like if I may, like just growing up as a kid, I remember when it wasn't cool to like anime. Like I remember like people used to always look at like, what is that, man? That's some goofy stuff. And I had like a few friends who be me in my little circle, we would get around and like watch it and kind of talk about it. But it's interesting now that like people, and even comic books for that example, people weren't really into comic books. Like anything like nerdy, it was just like not cool. But it seems like all these things now are, it's just the norm. Like in the age we're growing up in, it's like, it's cool to like superheroes now. It's cool to like watch these kind of movies, and like they're doing so well now. And I mean, albeit maybe not the best movies in the world, Netflix is making the effort to try to bring anime to the forefront and more live action sequences and things of that nature. But, even my nephew, he's like 13 now. He just loves anime, and like, that's what he grew up watching me do, and cartoons and comics and things of that nature. And I just really, I'm just great. I'm just happy to see that progression. But even in the professional like sense, right? Like when I went in, as a therapist, it's just like you're taught that traditional stuff, like, okay, evidence-based practice. It has to be like this specific structured treatment modality that, you have to follow this template, which is cool to a certain level, right? Because, they are effective. They're evidence-based for a reason. So it's not to discredit, those other modalities. But I think the other thing is let's think outside of the box as well. Like, I mean, that's why we have art therapy. We have these creative other avenues that we find to be just as impactful and as effective. And I think really what it comes down to is it's really meeting the person where they're at, and it's really embodying their strengths and what their interests are. And once you find that connection and utilizing, that geek therapy as a rapport builder, and also as like a relatability and a teacher to certain like situations, because as you said before, like you could find like a lot of like, mental health issues in anime. And even or anything really, like anime, comics, like even like TV shows, like you could find like a lot of different things. But applying that principle to our clients, I think is so dope. And that's why I'm appreciative that when I saw like that there actually is a certification for it, and Geek Therapeutics does exist. Shout out to Mark, by the way. But when that stuff does exist, like I'm like, man, that's so cool. Like I'm happy to see that people are actually doing research on these things. And for the longest time, video games even were just like so like discredit. Oh, video games are like the cause of like a lot of the youth's detriment, or there's too much like violence, or it's teaching them to do things. I was in that era of Mortal Kombat. I remember when Mortal Kombat first. You remember that? And
I was right there with you.
The art, like the game, I was just like, oh god, like it was, yeah. Like it's the reason why we have like the the levels of maturity now, right? But yeah, I do think that there is a component, right, to video games that helps. I mean, especially in this new age, like the social setting for people who maybe are more introverted and just really don't are trying to work on social skills. Man, my nephew is like a whole other person when he's playing his like online video games. He talking a little talkie. I'm like, who are you talking to? He's just like, oh, this is the. And he's like, it's like night and day with him. Because any other time he's really quiet, really reserved, kind of chill. But in the video game, he's like a whole other person. It's just but it seems to be healthy for him, and he loves it, and it really helps him to engage. And I think that that's the part that I think a lot of people are missing, that they're just focusing on the negative aspects of one part of it and not looking at the whole picture of it. So, yeah. But yeah, I'm definitely with you on, how it was treated. Because there still is a lot, out there that really tries to discredit, utilizing resources like video games and, things of that nature to try to relate to your clients. So I hear you on that. But in terms of your interventions, right? So like when you came into fruition with your practice, and now that you have that freedom to be able to do things, what do you typically do when you see a client? Like how do you map out what interventions you're going to use, and what are some interventions that you have used that you found to be effective with your client as it relates to their fandom?
Yeah, so I generally utilize a lot of video games and anime. And just recently I started getting more cosplay involved. But generally I'm basing it off their interests, right? If they're interested in a game, if I haven't played it, I'm gonna check it out and see, about that game. If it's anime and I haven't seen it, I'll watch it. I mean, I would say that the first time I used intervention, I had a 12-year-old male who was struggling with intrusive thoughts, and his favorite anime was My Hero Academia.
Hey,
My Hero is amazing. It's so good. It's so good therapeutically too. So good. But I asked him who his favorite character was. Obviously, I know about the anime. I've been watching it. I was up on everything, and he said Aizawa. Aizawa was his favorite. So,
okay.
I thought that was interesting, because generally when I get people who like, My Hero, it was never Aizawa that they were saying was his favorite. It was Midoriya or All Might or,
or Todoroki.
Or Todoroki or Bakugo. It was never Aizawa. And I asked him why, and he said, I really like his quirk. And, for those who haven't watched, his quirk is if he is looking directly at you, as long as he doesn't break eye contact, he can take your quirk away.
Yep.
And a quirk is a superpower for those who don't know, but he could take your quirk away. But the second he loses eye contact, like if he blinks or something, then your quirk returns.
Right.
So I thought that might be interesting to give my client Aizawa's power in terms of his intrusive thoughts. So if he, actually, just looked at the intrusive thought and just kind of gave it sort of attention, he could take it away.
Right.
Right. And then, if he isn't actively trying to take that away, of course it could come back. Right. So that might be him blinking his eyes and then focusing again and then being able to take it away, and kind of utilizing that analogy really helped him. Like, I think it was within a week, he was like, I haven't had an intrusive thought at all. Like, I'm feeling pretty good. And it just escalated from there.
I like that because like Aizawa, like codename Eraser, right? Like he nullifies those abilities, and I like that. I like that analogy. And I think just while we're on the subject of My Hero Academia, like I actually utilized that intervention. Like that first episode alone, is to me it's just like epic because it does tie in a lot, with being like, even though you're not where you would like to be in life, and there's certain goals that you are wanting to obtain that you may haven't achieved yet, not giving up on that and finding your niche and continuing to strive despite what other people say. And for those of you guys who have not seen My Hero Academia, I definitely encourage you guys to watch it. It definitely is a good anime. I really want to I have a whole nother spoiler review section that I'm going to do one day because I haven't done my review on the new season yet, but without spoiling it too much in this interview.
So good. It's so good.
It is, it's so good. But I definitely encourage you guys just to check it out. But there's a lot of life lessons in it. But I definitely think you can, even with everybody's quirks, you can tie into and their personalities too, right? Because when you think of Ayazawa, he's more of the, I guess what some people would call a little bit more introverted, doesn't talk a lot. Kind of Sasuke a little bit, and it's a little bit more laid back, but also very strict too, very stern when he needs to be because he's the teacher, right? So he can be really stern and hey, guys need to get your stuff together and
very much in control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So and that's cool, and I think those are great things and those are just things that in general, right, that you can draw from your clients because you can ask what would draw, and like you did with your client, what draws you to that character, and there's certain attributes that they like and that they kind of relate to and they connect with, and you can apply those methods. So I think that's dope. That's so dope. And
I definitely noticed that.
Yeah. Now you were talking about cosplay, right?
Sure.
So how do you feel that cosplay, from your opinion, how would you tie cosplay into a clinical setting? What are some themes of cosplay that you think really can apply, to the clinical aspect of our, clients that are into that culture?
Still finagling around with it, but it kind of comes into speaking with clients that would be open to cosplay, kind of thinking about people that they look up to, people that there's certain aspects of them that they would like to be able to take on themselves, and then kind of giving them that opportunity by saying hey, for me, my first cosplay was Urza Scarlet. I love Urza Scarlet from Fairy Tail. Yes. Another great one. But I love Urza Scarlet. I want to be her when I grow up. So, it really is empowering to dress up like these characters that you love so much and then act as though you are them, right? And dressing up just gets you there. Right? It really gets you in the mindset and taking on their characteristics and kind of being them so that it's when we're struggling with something, well, what would Urza do? What would your favorite character do? And actually act that out within the therapeutic process, because it's role play.
I was just about to say that it's really, I think that's where a good way it can really tie in is just from the role play aspect, because going back to what you were saying before about the client and his connection with the character on My Hero Academia, those attributes he may favor, and those are beneficial attributes, right? So role playing that character, what would Izawa do in that situation and how would he react? And processing that, I think that's really a really great tool for cosplay. Definitely,
and fun.
It is fun. I actually just started getting heavy into it maybe a couple of years ago, and everything like that. And I was a little nervous at first because I've heard things in terms of the culture and certain people, okay, you got to make your own costume and things of that nature. But then when I realized people really don't care. And, as long as, you just are having fun and enjoying yourself and just being, truthful with, what you're doing and things of that nature, I think everything has been okay. I've loved it. Like I actually got my girlfriend into it. Like we went to a couple cosplays last year that were really dope. But there actually was one for My Hero Academia that we went to in Alabama that was like awesome.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you're right though, because when you do wear those different cosplays and you do take on that character persona, it does like, you know, you do feel like a sense of empowerment, and like it's just really cool to kind of interact with other people who are really into it and just kind of like, you know, geek out and nerd out and just feels
so
like
much fun.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, as introverted as I am, like imagine like doing that, because like when you go to these conventions and you're dressed up, it's almost like you're a celebrity. Like everybody wants to stop and take your picture and everything. Yep. And it's like, it's kind of crazy how much fun that could be, because it's like, now we're doing this picture and we're like doing a certain pose that our character would do or something like that.
Right. You get that positive reinforcement because it's like almost like, you get that support.
The love.
I remember. Yeah, so much love. Like I enjoyed it. And like I remember like the last one we went to, Anime Week in Atlanta. There was like a whole bunch, like I was dressed up like Jean from my Samurai Champloo, and it was cool because like I don't think no one else was dressed up like Jean. They were like, dude, like, how do you even know about that? And it was just cool. And it's like, oh, can I take your picture? And then like some people were like rapping the theme song and everything to it. And I was like, hey, it was just like a fun time. And then like I was like, man, I gotta wear that again. Cause like I think it was like my first time wearing it. So I was like, oh, I gotta wear that again. Like that was
It's so much fun.
Cool. It is.
Yeah, my next one is gonna be Asuna from Sword Art Online. But the Asuna from Alicization.
I can't wait to see that one.
I don't know if you can throw a picture up, but
I'm sure you can find one.
I'm sure you can find one.
Yeah, we're gonna find the pictures and do some edits on that. And
yeah, but it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
That's cool, and I'm glad. I'm just happy that we're even able to still have them, especially with everything that's been going on this pandemic. Because I know like 2020, like it was just like everything was just shut down, and then like they finally kind of reemerged. Which brings me to my next point. Like you're playing like with especially in the times that we're living in now. A lot of things have kind of gone virtual nowadays, and I think like even with this type of treatment, like. Man, like I know, like we were talking about video games earlier. That social network can be so important. Just to have that outlet, right? Especially like when we're in quarantine and things of that nature. Having that outlet to be able to play video games, like or just do something like that you enjoy doing is so much fun. And I think if I remember correctly, Final Fantasy, right, was like your.
That's my
like
thing now. Right? Yeah, it's my thing now. I've been doing that. Final Fantasy 14 I've been doing for about 4 or 5 years now. Like I said, I started out playing World of Warcraft. I started at the tail end of vanilla and then played up until Cataclysm, and then kind of hated Cataclysm and stopped playing altogether. But I was dabbling in other MMOs. I beta tested Ion and then played that for a little bit. But when I met my boyfriend, he introduced me to Final Fantasy 14 and I absolutely loved it. I started out as a Makoti, and then played pretty much everything but a what is it? A Rogadin? I think I'm saying that. A Ro. But now I am a Viera. I did come back for World of Warcraft for Classic. Played a little bit of Classic, and then it was just getting too much to raid in Classic and Final Fantasy and just like maintain that and work and life. So I gave up World of Warcraft and have been solely focused on Final Fantasy 14. Just clearing all the content. New Savage raids out now. We're halfway through the 3rd boss. Cleared a few ultimates,
That's awesome. And see, like I've seen people play Final Fantasy 14. I've myself not played it, but it looks great. Like I think it looks like a really fun game. I played Final Fantasy like from 7 to 10, and then I went back and played some of the older ones, like on the Game Boy Advance, like the 1 through 4. But like when they did the Final Fantasy VII remake, I was just like, oh my god, like I think I just geeked out. Like that was like, I was like, oh god, and that was
everybody loves Seven.
That was right during the. I was like, that was right on time, man. And that game got me through the pandemic. That's all I was playing. Like I was just playing Final Fantasy.
You know, people, you know, especially people who socialize a lot, were very much affected by the pandemic. For me, it's like I've been training for this my whole life. I've just always been introverted and more virtual. So it was like, okay, so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm definitely extrovert. Like, so it was like, when we had the quarantine, man, I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't work out. I have to work out in the house. I can't go nowhere. I'm just stuck. So I'm sitting here.
I loved it. You know what it is, though? You know what's really messed up, though?
What?
We talk about quarantining. I was actually on the front lines, though. So I was still going out.
Likewise.
I think I was only home having to do virtual work for about a month or two, and then it was back in it. But even then, like, you know, you think a month or two does sound long, but I was loving every minute of it.
Well, so I started off like I was in the front because like, and I think that's the other thing people forget, like mental health. Like a lot of us were still out there. Like I work at the time I was working in a prison, so I was working with you know level 4 inpatient inmates at a mental health prison, and we were still having to go out there, and you know, a lot of those guys, you know, had it, you know, we're getting COVID at the time, and we're trying to figure out how to triage everything and how that's going to look. So we still were having to go out there. And I think we actually, we finally did get that approval to work remote for like a couple of months. Then we went right back in there, you know, and then, so it wasn't really like we had a lot of time to do it. But that time that we did, those few months, I was like, oh man, what am I going to do? I mean, I was working, but then after that, I was just like, okay, what am I going to do? It's kind of twiddling my thumbs, you know.
I was working, but then I was playing my video games.
Right. So, but yeah, I mean, I think like people saw the importance of it now. So now they're like, you know, like they said, oh, well, video games aren't so bad because like, you know, people are actually, you know, it was finding some benefit. And in terms of like Final Fantasy 14 in particular, is there anything that, you know, that stands out to you in terms of things that you can take from it, aside from it being just a fun game, right? And it's just really entertaining. Is there anything like that you found that it kind of could help with, you know, with working with clients?
100%. You know, I was running I usually run supervisions Friday, as you know, and in my last 2 supervisions, we've been talking about Final Fantasy 14 a lot, especially for people who are having a hard time with communication, or you know, social anxieties. And how Final Fantasy 14 could be a really good place to practice social skills. Considering that, you know, I think out of every MMO out there, I think Final Fantasy 14 has probably the nicest community. So, you know, you're not, I mean, could you run into someone toxic? Of course, but the likelihood is a lot less with Final Fantasy 14 than it is with any other game. And there's a lot of opportunity to socialize. There's the free companies. If you like role play, you know, you can stand in Limsa, and especially on certain servers, or, you know, even just practicing saying hi to a new group of people because you're queuing into a roulette and running a dungeon with people that you don't know. There's also the link shells option, which, you know, interestingly enough, I'll be starting a Geek Therapeutics link shell in Final Fantasy 14 when data center travel becomes available, because I believe once that becomes available, link shells might be open to regional data centers, which will make a little bit more sense.
Nice. That's the and that makes a lot of sense. Heather, like definitely, like I think communication skills are key, and it just gives people, boosts self-esteem, boosts morale. I think those are good things that you know you can have with the game, man. So okay, so I was reading your bio, and I remember you were saying like you've been kind of into geeky things since you were 6 years old, and the first game that you said you played was Super Mario Brothers. Like, and that kind of was like a segue into your like gaming experience. And I love Super Mario Brothers. Like, I had the regular Nintendo. That was like my first
Me too.
ever system. You too? That was like
Yeah.
my first ever system, man. Like, and that was like I remember the first game I got was Super Mario Brothers, and it was like a duck hunting game. So you had the little gun.
Yes, Duck Hunt. Yes, with the gun. With the gun.
Yes,
Yes.
you had to shoot the ducks. Yes,
Yeah.
So
We
I
had that too.
Yeah, that was like my first, my first introduction into video games. So, like, tell me in particular, what did you find to be like fun about that particular game, and how it like what was your segue into it from there, like starting with Mario?
I don't know. Like, so I mean, again, I have to credit my dad because
Okay.
he was a geek. So of course, you know, he has to be up on all the electronics. So we always had the latest and greatest electronics, I guess. You know, so just probably not like what millionaires had, but like, you know, for the general household. So of course, when Nintendo came out, I think he bought it more for him than us, but you know, we got it for Christmas, and it was great. And I don't know, it was the graphics, it was the music. Like, who
Yeah.
doesn't love Super Mario music? I know, yes,
Yeah.
yes, the underground.
The underground.
But it was just so much fun to play and play together and see how far each other get. Duck Hunt, of course, that was fun.
Yeah.
But you know, it started out with that, and then, you know, it kind of went reverse. Because we had gotten a Nintendo, then we got an Atari, because my dad wanted me to see where it all started.
Okay.
So I was like, okay. But, you know, like I said, latest and greatest here, we also got a computer. So that's where I started doing gaming on the computer.
Nice.
So like Oregon Trail,
things
like that.
Oregon Trail.
You
I
remember?
used to play that at school.
Yeah. And we had one of those computer with the big floppy disk, not like the little ones, like the big floppy disk. And we had Oregon Trail on that.
Oh man, you take me back with that one. I remember that game. We used to play that at school. Like we used to have, and you had to answer like certain questions the right way, and just tell a little story. And if people actually would get sick, and you had to like make sure that they would stay healthy and stuff like that.
Yeah, I either died of dysentery or snake bite, or like you try to caulk the boat when you're trying to cross the river, and then you all drown. Like it was nuts. It was like you were there.
That's so dope, like, you know, like I think Super Mario Brothers is like, it's just a time. It's so simple yet so complex at the same time, because it did challenge you, right? Because you would get to that point, you would get to certain stages, and you really had to think about it.
I mean, it was essentially like, if you look at Super Mario, the first one, it's essentially a jump puzzle when you think about it. It's just essentially that. I got a question for you though.
What's up?
So there's like, out of, you know, the Nintendo Super Marios, there was 1, 2, and 3. Which one was your favorite?
3, hands down.
3 was good.
3 was my favorite one. Like when you had that raccoon suit and you could like fly up into the sky and like, man. And then it was always cool because like me and my cousin would play that game for like hours, man. And then like once we finally beat it the regular way, like my cousin had the game Genie. So then he would hook the game Genie up, and we'd have like all the cheat codes, and like you could do all. And then we, of course, everybody always knows about the infamous flute, where you could like actually skip everything and go to the end, which we did not know. We actually played it through. We didn't figure it out till way later.
I fluted.
You fluted?
No, I fluted, dude. I fluted. Oh, you know what? I want to give some credit to another Nintendo game that was like a huge staple for me, and I love it, and I kind of want to play it. I might play it after this. Bubble Bobble.
Bubble Bobble. Yeah. I've never heard of that one. What game is that?
It had the cutest music. It was adorable music, and you play as these like cute little dragons that blow bubbles, and you just keep blowing bubbles trying to catch little bad guys in them, and you catch the bad guy in them, and then you jump on the bubble to pop it, and
Yeah.
you have to clear the floor.
What? I've never heard of that game. Was that on like regular Nintendo?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It was so cute.
I gotta check
Love
that
that
out.
game.
I remember like I had so before Mama sold it, I was like, "Oh, Mom, why did you sell it?" She's because when I got my Sega Genesis, she was like, "Oh, you got too many sisters." We had like a yard sale. She just sold it. I was just like, "Oh God!" But like I had Mario, I had the Duck Hunt game, Mario 3, Paperboy, I had Final Fantasy, and I had what's the game with Donkey Kong Jr. Remember when you had to like
Donkey Kong,
I had that. Yeah, and I had those are some of the games I had. Then when I got Sega Genesis, it was just like I guess I didn't play it as much. So she was like, "Oh, I'm getting rid of it." So I was like,
I played that a lot too. I got a Sega when that came out too. And then Sonic the Hedgehog was obviously
classic.
That was my jam on Sega. That and I don't remember. I think it was Mortal Kombat for not Super, for NES.
Okay.
I think Mortal Kombat. Yeah, I think that's where I was doing that. And Zelda. How are we forgetting about Zelda?
Oh, Zelda, man, yes.
Yo,
yes.
I have the gold cartridge.
Ooh.
Yeah, we still have it. We still have every single system, like boxed up nicely in the attic.
Nice. Yeah, that's one of the illest games, yo. Like and you're talking about something that and going back to therapy, something that makes you critically think, like from a cognitive standpoint, just like you having to figure out these puzzles, like the mazes that you have to go through. Like that's some critical thinking, yo. Like that's definitely some conflict resolution that you're having to like go through these obstacles and figure it out. And yeah, like I remember I think Mark did a training on like how he talked about like gaming and therapy, and he used like an analogy of how he's used Zelda as in therapy, and how he's related some of those conflicts to real life, with not being afraid, completing the mission, and strategizing and coming up with different methods, so I think it's so dope. Yeah, you could definitely apply like video games to anything, and then even with like art, from RPGs to adventure games to action RPGs to even fighting games. That really just depending on what your flavor is. But I think there's something out there for everybody, honestly.
There really is, like 100%. I mean, in my therapeutic practice, generally with the younger kids, they love Roblox and Minecraft, and that's something that I could do both virtually and in session. I have my young ones or my preteens, and even some of my teens bring in their tablets so we can play. Sometimes it's Among Us. I know it's not like technically the nicest game, but yeah, a lot of Minecraft, because a lot of people find a lot of relaxation in Minecraft, and Roblox, because there's just so many different games. It's like I implemented one time with a kid of mine who was having a hard time with frustration tolerance, and I asked them, what's the hardest game on Roblox for you? And they said Tower of Hell, which is just a ginormous jump puzzle. That's what it is. It's a jump puzzle.
And I was actually thinking about Tetris. Because you could definitely, in terms of like, just stressors and being able to like testing somebody's level or ability to try to cope under pressure. I think Tetris is like a really awesome one,
That's a really good one too. Yeah, because you can mess up if you're not, staying calm and just seeing what's in front of you. But for this particular kid, it was Tower of Hell on Roblox, and I was like, hey, great, we're gonna play it, and we're gonna practice our coping techniques while we play it. So he ended up getting even further than he's ever gotten that session in that game, because we were doing the breathing exercises and mindfulness and all that in the moment while he was getting frustrated with the Tower of Hell puzzle.
And I was even gonna say, like, and even now, like, there's the virtual games that you can play that really go in depth on certain issues, certain like clinical issues and things of that nature. Like, I actually was doing a training with Ryan from Geek Therapeutics, and he was kind of like showing like a video game of like how the brain looks and how different.
Oh yeah, the VR.
Yeah, and it was so dope. I was like, wow. I was like, I gotta get me one of those. So I'm saving up for like I think it's called Quest 2 or something. It's like the virtual thing or whatever.
Oh, okay. We have an Oculus.
Oh, not an Oculus. Okay. Yeah, he mentioned that one too. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna look into getting one of those because I think that would be really fun. Good. Yeah.
I gotta say, like though, on the Oculus, I played the boxing game. That tires you out, man. It's
really
insane.
Wow.
It's insane. Like how much it tires you out because it's like really trying to feel that swing. Yeah.
So you're really just like jabbing. Man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Heather, I just want to say thank you again for taking time out your day to speak with me at Comments and Coffee. We definitely gonna have to have you on again for a part 2.
I love that.
Yeah, to talk about some more geeky things. But before we wrap up today, though, I do want you to allow you the opportunity to maybe like, if you have anything going on, any where they can find you at, if in terms of your practice, whatever you have going on, please share that with us. And then also if there's any like suggestions in terms of like people who are maybe looking for an anime to get into or video games, maybe if you have any in particular that you may encourage our viewers to check out, please do that as well.
For sure. So, being as virtual as I am, it's kind of, backwards that I don't have a lot of social media. But where you can find me in terms of clinical work would be Bavoy Mental Health Counseling, BAVOY, Mental Health Counseling. You can also hit me up on Discord at DJ Starfire number 8900. I am literally I like live in Discord. So you can always hit me up there. Obviously, Geek Therapeutics. You can find me on that website as well. In terms of a starter anime, I mean, it really depends on your cup of tea, but I think My Hero Academia is like a really well all-around easy one to get into, especially with all the superhero movies going on, and it's essentially superheroes, just anime. So I would say that would be a really good starter one. In terms of video games, I mean, again, that depends on your cup of tea. If you're looking for MMO or just console gaming, because I'm a big PC gamer. I would say if you are looking at MMOs, Final Fantasy, like I said, Final Fantasy 14 it's an amazing game. It is a little difficult to learn how to play, but the community is so great and they will help you along the way.
That's so awesome. And just for clarity purposes, what does MMO stand for?
A massive multiplayer online.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Especially because I honestly didn't know, and now maybe some of our viewers didn't know. But thank you so much, Heather, for clarifying. You've been running with your boy, the clinician, on Comments and Coffee. We'll see you guys in a few weeks. Enjoy yourself. Be safe out there. And we'll see you. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.